Well, everyone, we're continuing on with our Resident Evil series, and as I am excited to talk about the entire series, I'm super excited to talk about my first Resident Evil. Shun me and roast me if you must, that I am super late to the game, no pun intended. Village is in fact the first one I played at its entirety, and I gotta say, it may or may not have been for specific reasons. Can't fake, it was on sale on Steam, so I said, hey, I'm gonna send it. Don't be thinking what I think you're thinking, because it might be that too. Because it was an easy game, it was a good introduction. However, a good introduction for me was a not so good shit sequel for some of y'all fans. Every time I talk to anyone about Village, they say they loved it. It was dope. It was a dope game. It was easy, but it was fun. I was just here for the vamp mommy titties. But whenever I meet people online or talk to people online about it, it was a letdown. It sucked. I ain't like it. Make Resident Evil scary again. And to be honest, that last one kind of makes sense. I totally get that, to be honest. Make up your minds though. Let's be real. Either people hated or loved it from what it seems. And that's just kind of the bottom line of Resident Evil Village. This is Resident Evil Village, the fantastic sequel that everyone loves to hate. Before I get started, please drop a like on the video, as this helps me out, and click the subscribe button if you're digging what you've been seeing so far. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks a lot. First starting into the game, I really had no idea what to expect other than my small Resident Evil 4 and 5 experience from over 10 years ago. This was a completely different game, so that was 100% irrelevant at this point. We start off with Mia being low-key irresponsible, reading a 6-month-old horror stories, which is perfect for a baby's developmental brain. There's a book called The Village of Shadows. I find this cool because of the foreshadowing here, and the story is actually in relation to a few details on the game and of Lady D's actual life story. I'll go into more detail if need be later. But one thing I gotta say is that this game gave me a eye massage, because this shit is beautiful as hell. I didn't even think that it can get much better than 7 so fast, but it did. Like, bro, can I float? I don't want to fuck up these nice ass floors. This game wasted no time destroying your peace, and your peaceful life, and saying that this baby is the main focus of the game this time, because Chris Redfield came in with the body bags for Mia. Man straight up disrespected Ethan, shot her like 4 times in front of him, and stole his kid. Motherfucker said, I'm the baby daddy now. You learn there is a reason for this. Spoiler alert, Mia's not actually the Mia from Resident Evil 7, and for some reason Chris waits the entire game to tell you this. For some reason Chris somehow expects and thinks Ethan is gonna basically sit back and do nothing after he made him look like a bitch for the first few minutes of the game. To be honest, regardless of the overall fear factor of this game, the first sequence is actually pretty terrifying. It starts out similar to 7 actually, walking through the woods, but this time it's pitch black at night in the snow, and you can clearly tell there's something not human with you. There are only a few portions of the game that are actually like this, and that's what most people say about this game not being as consistently scary as 7. You also figure you will go against some enemies that are probably not the mold, since it's determined that whatever you're going against can smash through entire villages. It's new and fresh, and as the mold was basically your only enemy in the prequel of 7. In my opinion, the village gives you some variation, except there is no past molded, which in my opinion is silly. I think they could have just incorporated them, since this is a sequel, and it kind of is a bit of a conglomeration of all the enemies, and could have brought more of like a part 2 feeling. The introduction to this game is very stretched out and slow. It goes from the first scene with Mia getting made into literal Swiss cheese, to exploring the village, fighting lichens, along with Ethan's hand getting bit into this time instead of chopped off, to fighting off a pack of lichens in which you're actually given no direction to fighting. This little part of the game was a bit stressful already, as you're going against them with barely any ammo and weapons, and the game doesn't really tell you pretty much anything. You pretty much have to survive this attack for about 7 minutes. I don't really care what anyone says. The Molder are scarier in my opinion, but these glowing eyes and the bob and weave motions that these cats keep giving, all while being surrounded by about 5 or more of these son bitches, is a bit nerve-wracking, especially when it's a bit too quiet. You just see them staring at you. from the tops of homes and houses. Like, bro, look at this shit. Leave me the fuck alone. If you gonna come at me, just go ahead and do it now instead of waiting early in the shadows. Bro, I don't like that. It's a bit uneasy. With all the long, stretchy intros, we can finally get to the actual start of the game. Ironically, it happens the exact same way as it did in 7, except you have absolutely no chance in hell of surviving, even if you try and throw a punch.
You must be pretty tough, huh?
Who the fuck are you?
Found by one of Mother Miranda's 4 appointed rulers, Carl Heisenberg. Instead of just getting your peef punched in, you get locked in and barricaded in a ton of metal, and once again dragged into another little meeting area. This once again sets up to show you who the big baddies are of the game. And damn, I really mean big baddies for real, let's be honest with you. Goddamn, son. Mother Miranda, who is the main villain and the boss of the game, along with her 4 lords of descendants of the former kings that founded the village that this game revolves around. Vampy Mommy, that everybody fucking loves, Lady D, Lady Dimitrescu, Donna Beneviento, Salvatore Moreau, and Carl Heisenberg. Let's get into the real, thick, juicy meat into this game. I want to point out that Castle Dimitrescu is an absolute beautifully done castle. In my opinion, this is a clear example of what the Reach for the Moon RE engine can actually do. I talked about this in my RE7 video, but I can assume that the photogrammetry method they used here was heavily boosted. RE7 introduced the world to the capabilities of the engine, but Village definitely set the standard and took it to the next level. I found myself mesmerized seeing every carve, design, and detail of the stairs, to the wall details, to the absolute eye candy of the chandeliers. When you walk into the main hall with the spiral staircase, it just makes you want to stand in awe of how absolutely insanely beautifully this place is. Castle Dimitrescu is such a large part of the game that I feel like everywhere else is essentially minuscule. With the exception of Heisenberg's domain near the end of the game, it consists of 7 floors, the entry level, the 2 main floors, the 2 basement floors, a roof, and a tower. The basement floor is the most grueling you'll run into here. You'll basically get ganged up on by a good number of enemies called the Moriaika. Fun fact, these are actually all women, because if it's not obvious yet, Lady D just uses men to harvest their blood. She wants to cut the cock off of all man. I can't say it. I take it back, bro. I'm not even gonna do it anymore. But I was like, oh, she wants to cut off the dicks of all man, bro. But I don't even know what to say. That's kind of how it is. She just hates dudes. I'll try to explain that later. The roof is by far the easiest of the areas of the game. You'll run into a few flying enemies here, but that's really all. You also have to fight one of her daughters here, which in hindsight are really easy to beat. They're all beaten just by simply exposing them to cold outside air, which is they're susceptible to low temperatures. Let me also mention that these trees talk so much shit until Pidgeotto uses Gust on their ass in the dead of winter. Like, how you gonna talk so much trash but crumble under pressure? Like, let me just take a fan out, put it in the coldest setting for that matter, and just go ahead and just walk out. Grass type Pokemon head ass, bro. Like, what do you mean?
You're my prey, mama!
Going back to the castle itself, it's big, but you don't really get lost. Most of it's in fact pretty linear. Your objective here is to find 4 angel masks to get you to escape to the next portion of the game. 1 mask, next portion of the game, 2nd mask, other portion of the game. So it essentially opens up in that kind of manner. So I've been waiting to talk about her this entire time. And I am absolutely convinced Lady D carried these sales for this game. And we all know this is 100% facts. During the trailer, she was the only one they really showed. And if you don't remember, I'm actually lying. If you're watching this video, you know the internet became bricked up in unison. A bricked up united front for this woman. I have never seen this much horniness. You go to Twitter, you go to YouTube, you go to anywhere. The amount of bricked upness in unison for this vamp mom. I've never seen anything like this in my life, bro. We can continue right here. We can keep going.
I just can't help myself.
They really made you think that she was gonna be a bigger factor here, and while she was the first boss of the entire game. Like, you can't even go back into the castle after you beat her. This was actually a letdown for me personally. I love constantly running into her, as she was set as a stalker type like Mr. X, except not as intimidating. She actually was the only villain this way. I'm not sure why they only made her set as the stalker type. I don't know, who knows, but it is what it is. But I'm pretty sure no one was complaining about it. I'm not gonna talk too much about her backstory, as I need to keep it moving, but I'll keep it short. Lady D was actually part of a noble family and was a jazz singer back in the 40s, you can kind of tell. It's kind of a visual vibe with her wardrobe, the style of her dress, the big ass hat, the fucking pipe, cigarette thing. Look, I don't know what it's called, but it looks like one of those old school ass pipes they used to smoke back in the day when you watch old black and white movies from like the Hollywood golden era. She was taken in by Mother Miranda and experimented on by the Kadu parasite, the thing that essentially caused all this in the first place. She also had a blood disease while she was still human, which she still had after all this happened to her. And while she does get regenerative powers and all, it doesn't nullify this issue. That's why she has to constantly get clean blood. I can imagine this can be harder to deal with when most of the village you were sucking blood from are pretty much gone later in the game. Or for her case in, like, I guess her life. I don't know what to say, like, whatever. Also want to point out, she's so damn big because of her regenerative powers. And she has several assassination contracts on her, as you can guess. Like the bad bitch she did. I don't know why why she would use the knife and bury the person that tried to kill her in the game. In the same castle. Like, you stab her at the end of her part with someone that tried to kill her before, but the person's buried with the knife that can kill her, which laced with poison. Why? This is definitely a huge part of why she's missing or subtracted from her character as a villain, in my opinion. Because why would you set yourself up like that? That's like setting yourself up. That's like putting this, like, in SpongeBob or like in every like cartoon, the like Plankton or the main villain puts like a self-destruct button. Or in the machine that he's using, like...
I did self-destruct. Not one of my better ideas.
This doesn't make any sense, but okay. She's gotten hurt a number of times, which has resulted to her growth. The bitch is 9'6". 9'6". Like, 9'6". Damn, just using me as a dick. Also, one last cool theory I read about was the reason why she possibly hates men is in regards to her dad. Somewhere in the Village of Shadows story, it was explained that there was a girl whose dad promised to come back to help her when she started getting sick. He never did because he was captured and killed, theoretically by Mother Miranda. She was then left to suffer after her dad never kept his promise. I don't know if this is true, but this is something interesting info after watching the ending credit clips of the game. But I'm gonna end off this one by saying her final boss fight was pretty fun, but just nasty as fuck. Like, how does this become this? Like, girl, let me come through to yeah.
Hell no.
To getting stabbed with this poison dagger, she transforms into her actual molded form. The battle itself isn't that complicated, but just looks super intimidating. With such a large enemy in a small space, it's mostly taking cover behind rooftop spaces until you get a clear shot at her. Just keep ammo and items on deck and you'll pretty much have her crash into her own estate in no time. Overall, it's a simple battle but may drag on. Safe to say, it was sad to see her go. After seeing so much of her prior to the release, you'd think that you'd see more of her later on in the game. We got a lot of her, but like low-key not enough. By the time we started getting a good amount of interaction with her, it essentially ended like kind of a letdown. So I really feel like she had a lot more potential than what was provided in the game. Before I continue with the main antagonist of the game, I actually want to talk about one of my favorite guys, the Duke. The Duke is your simple and not so simple explanation of a merchant that you just buy weapons and materials from. Weapons, materials, and even in the newer additions to the franchise, meals. You first run into him outside of Demetre's castle, but you don't actually really get any useful information and actual serious dialogue from him until afterwards, when running into him at the altar outside. He gives you a large bit of information that Ethan should know, Before this, he doesn't really know anything about who he's up against. Ethan, you know what I'm talking about? Well, consider him a very helpful person in the story, telling Ethan about their hideouts, the unborn keys he has to acquire, and even Rose's flask that for some reason holds Rose's limbs, but Ethan believes she's still alive. Man's faith is just unbreakable at this point. He comes in handy more than once, which is why I feel if they make a third sequel to the Ethan stories, he'll end up as the merchant again. Once from just being a merchant, second filling you in with useful information, third from marking your map on where the lords actually are, and fourth for saving you after Ethan gets his literal heart ripped out of his chest like he's a Mortal Kombat practice bot. Damn, this man goes through hell. Jesus Christ, yo.
Death will come quick. You will join the Megamycetes records. I will make sure to sample your blood for later. Once dawn breaks, the ceremony will be complete, and I will become her true mother, bound for eternity in blood.
Somebody get this man Ethan a break, give him a reward, give him something. Like, yo. Just when this man can't get it, like, get any worse. Like, yo, look, if he ain't had that motor power, it'd been over for him. Like, it would have been over. It would have been over. Like all merchant inventory advanced into the game, he starts off with some basic run-of-the-mill weapons, but as Village is pretty much an easy game, his inventory expands very fast in my opinion. Unlike RE4, when you constantly go to the merchant looking for dire help, and there's nothing that can really help you, no ammo, no stronger weapons, or whatever you need to get past to the next challenge. Like, you really gotta strategize. But here, it's pretty easy, and you kinda have a lot of options to choose from. You get various, like, items from defeating 4 lords, which he gives you a pretty hefty penny for. I feel like as long as you're not spending decently, you can pretty much achieve everything he offers at a pretty reasonable, like, effort. You also have a good amount of marked treasures of the 4 lords and few other random chests you can find to sell them. The only thing I didn't really use was his meal preps that he offered. Not that it was a bad option, I just didn't feel like going out of my way to shoot a couple remaining farm animals for recipes that were seemingly a bit more complicated to acquire, and to be honest, they were kind of a bit out of my way, so I wasn't really gonna bother to try. Overall, the Duke is a huge benefit of the game, and to be honest, one of the most loved characters from Village, despite him being only a salesman. From the Resident Evil games that I've played, it kind of makes sense. He seems to have the most personality, from his snarky, witty comments to having no explanation of how this motherfucker is damn 1,500 fucking pounds. How are you this damn heavy? Like, what the hell? It's safe to say his horse has seen better days, because damn, this nigga fat as shit. How you doing this to this poor horse, my guy? Supreme, like, 4 horseman horse? Like, yo, this is not a normal horse to be carrying this big ass man around, bro. Like, bro, relax. Like, please be nice to this noble steed. Like, he really is a noble steed. Fun fact, Duke is actually supposed to be one of the 4 lords, but he was later scrapped later in development. When you think about it, it's not too far off, simply because his appearance is really out of the ordinary. He looks like he can fit the more rude vibe of a character, not quite as disgusting, but grotesque nonetheless. I really think that all the talk and speculation of a third sequel, it would be like a really good idea to bring the Duke back. Sad he wasn't in 7, but it would be a bigger letdown if he wasn't in the 3rd installment of the winter series of the games. Like, bring the homie back. It is what it is. Moving onward to the next portion of the game is my absolute favorite. Absolute favorite. This is the GOAT portion of the game, in my opinion. Everyone loved this part of the game, and if you wasn't about it, you probably stopped off here. If you love horror and horror games, this was your favorite part of the game as well. It was also the scariest section of the game, and I'm thoroughly upset that it was nowhere near long as Lady D's. Enter House Beneviento with Donna and her doll Angie. The way up to the house is a little suspenseful. You kind of expect little something when Ethan starts hallucinating. Also, something being totally different than what you got in the castle. The Silent Hill-esque vibe. the dolls hanging from the trees, the burial site of her relative Claudia, and the doll graves around it. It's all total perfection, and my gosh, don't even get me started on the walk into the area where you oversee the waterfall. Absolute perfection. Perfect setting to entering what you pretty much just don't expect. I'm gonna come out here and say it right now. What subtracted from this game was not giving this section a bigger part. The whole section was a giant dub, but not making it longer was a whole ass L. Donna and Angie was by far the most mentally challenging character with the scariest, absolutely most terrifying domain. Hands down. The only sad thing is that never got really much of a backstory on Donna at all. While I also might add, we didn't get that much of a backstory for any of these characters. Donna and Angie was pretty much non-existent though. You can't really have a character with a whole ass talking doll that doesn't show her face and expect not to explain anything whatsoever. Well, I guess it kind of adds to the mystery, so it adds to the scariness factor. I don't know, maybe that's what they was going for. And that's kind of in some horror themes, horror tropes, so that kind of makes sense. You get hints, but even so, her story isn't very big. We know she's also a descendant of the kings of the village, and as similar to as the other three, but her parents committed when she was still a child, which is the darkness that kind of falls over the waterfalls. No pun intended. Cheesy. During her time growing up, she developed a mental health problem, so if it ain't obvious, she's one of those hot, depressed goth girls, and it kind of just shows it. Let's be real, it kind of just shows it. It's speculated that Angie was given to her by her father to communicate with others easier, but we don't know for sure because the cadeau given her the ability to induce extreme hallucinations. It's unclear if she uses the ability to speak through Angie, or if it's kind of like some sort of ventriloquist kind of deal. Either way, the dolls around this house are just super freaky. Like, if you have a doll phobia, and I know people who do, I know people who like legitimately loathe dolls, you will cuss the hell out of this game. It's part of the game. I love how Angie and Donna are meant to be complete opposites. Angie is in a white dress while being very outgoing, while Donna covers her face with a black mourning dress while never muttering a single word. Going deeper into why this is the best part of the game, it's regarded as one of the best, scariest sections of any Resident Evil title. So much so that some people ended the game right here. They ended the game. They was like, no, we're not going any further with this at all. Donna's section of the game gave people so much anxiety that they actually couldn't complete it. Think about this. Her power was based on thwarting your mind, and she legitimately did this with real people. Bruh, that's pretty insane now that you actually think about it. You don't have any weapons here, and that's not even the rough part. Upon entering the estate, there's a completely different vibe that the player was actually put up to until this point. It's quite isolated, which puts you in a complete state of the unknown. It's nothing you've experienced yet, and every corner and every turn you make makes you a bit more nervous, because whatever is gonna happen, you're gonna get closer and closer to it. Entering the basement, you're tasked with solving a puzzle within the life-size doll of Mia, most likely representing the secrets Ethan had to get out of her during Resident Evil 7. This is followed by roaming in complete darkness. The tip of the big-ass iceberg while in the complete darkness is that you find a trail of blood leading from where the Mia doll was, and roaming the halls as this deformed baby fetus. Which is obviously a twisted hallucination of Rose. A combination of maneuvering through all of these issues with having no weaponry at all leaves you as the player in a state of vulnerability. you can easily get killed by this creature too. In fact, the game purposely makes you look at it in the face as it walks closer to you upon leaving the basement floor. The developers actually said, we know damn well you avoided coming face to face with this shit, but now you have to legitimately move a certain way in the game and stare this unborn ass fetus in the face eye level before you leave and close this part of the game. I honestly cannot say that they portrayed a lot of things exceptionally here. It can be safe to say the baby was made so nastily in the way that depicted Ethan's thoughts on Rose. She may be alive, she may not be. She may be holding on to their life, but to what extent? Will he not like what he sees if or when he gets to her? Like, it's kind of up in the air. Apparently her body has been like cut into these separate flaks, so what exactly is he hanging on to? Clearly she would be dead from that. Clearly they really played mind games with you during this shit during the entire time, which essentially in my opinion made this part of the game iconic. I cannot tell you how many times I ended up pausing here, from minimal jump scares to the wail to the crying to the dark corridors to the hiding under the bed before you die. The portion of this game is extremely well done. The basement here is also a bit of a condensed maze, so you can get confused in the dark, which is another fear factor and uneasiness to the player. It took the player out of control and rendered you completely helpless. The final fight with her is really cool. It's not like a standard battle, but presented something new. Essentially a game of horrific hide and seek, if you will. You have to find Angie 3 to 4 times, giving her more and more damage. They still give you a sense of hallucinating, and it's possible that you are. I also find it cool that this is the only time you hear Donna say anything ever. As the screen goes more and more shaky, the music here, which is actually a French children's song about playing in the woods, somehow fits perfectly. There's a lot of sounds and filtering that makes you feel like you're in a rush, or something will happen if you don't find her in time.
Everything would be better if Rose wasn't born.
Fucking monster.
I never managed to find out if there's an if, but if it was, I really didn't want to know. There's a reason why House Beneviento is revered in Resident Evil, as well as the survival horror genre in general. We wanted more, but what lasted was platinum level horror content. It was something new that also played with the player mentally and in more than several ways. To be honest, I'd love to see some more DLC with these two in the future, to be honest. Like, this part was just really good. Like, no exceptions, no downfall. The only thing that's attractive with this was because it was so short, and maybe because they're game developers, I don't develop games, maybe they were thinking, if we make it longer, it's gonna like pass its stay, and it's gonna like kind of fall badly, and that maybe possibly what they were thinking. I don't know, but I can say that was the only part of this game that I had, the part of the section of this game that I had a problem with. Other than that, perfection, amazing, very thought out, very well planned, fear factors, everything there. If all Resident Evil games was like this, 100%, this is a sign that they should go back to try and make PT, because I will play that game 100%. Moving on, I'm going to talk about the action and playstyle of this game and Salvatore Moreau. However, this video is getting kind of long. So I decided to make this a 2-part video. Sorry I had to cut it off right here, but it's getting kind of long. It's a lot to talk about. RE Village is such a long game. Playtime wise, it's about the same as Biohazard, but there's so much more in depth to this game that I thought. And when I realized, when playing through it, it doesn't seem that long, but just going through details of this game, it seems like a lot. So like, it seems like a huge game. So with that being said, stay tuned for part 2, because we got a lot to cover. With that being said, thanks for coming over to my channel. I hope you enjoyed the video. Part 1, anyway. Part 1. Part 2, is up next. Part 2 of Resident Evil Village is next. If you enjoyed what you watched today, please leave a like. Share with your homies. I greatly appreciate it. I've left my links in the description down below. Feel free to follow me on those as well. I appreciate all of you, and be safe out there. This is Kymax. Later.
You're never going to get out of here. Stupid idiot! What are you doing to my cute friends?
It's over. Mia, I'll make things right.